Here he is. That's it. It is the long-awaited 1000th episode of NBA Straya. I can't believe it. You can't believe it. Our special guest can't believe it. He's the bloke with his name. What is it on the NBL trophy? Because he won it about 47 times. I think it was 7, but that's right. 2-time champion in the NBL, NBA champion, Boomer legend, Aussie captain, Olympic captain, flag bearer. You might have seen him pop up during Sydney 2000. You might have seen him have a bit of a cry after we won that bloody bronze medal. He's an Aussie icon, a beloved institution. He's basically everyone's favourite. He's the best pitchman we've ever seen in Australia. I've got the Gazey ponies to prove it over here.
There you go. Nice.
And he scored, over almost 19,000 points in the NBL. He also dunked once. That was pretty good. I think it was twice, but that's right. It is my ultimate pleasure to introduce the very special guest for the 1000th episode of NBA Straya, the Aussie GOAT, the Grey Mamba himself. It's Andrew Gazey. Gazey, what is going on? How are you?
Oh, I'm going really well. It's a delight to be here. I wasn't aware that firstly that I hadn't been on your program before, and secondly, congratulations, 1,000 episodes. It's a hell of an achievement. We all know how tough it is in the media game, and to survive 1,000 episodes, you must be doing something right. So well done.
Thank you, Gazey. I mean, my wife is very, shall we say, lenient. More than anything. And I don't know, doing a daily NBA show never seemed like this world's smartest career choice, but here we are. It's worked out. Okay.
It's good fun. It's great fun. And over the last few years in particular, you've had a lot to talk about, mostly good, some not so good, but mostly good.
There's a couple of moments at the moment where it's a bit sketchy, but I mean, we wanted to have you on for the 1000th because, I mean, this is it, right? Like for specifically my generation. So I just turned 40 this year. And if you look at a lot of the folks that I talk to about basketball, we're of that generation, grew up in the 90s, probably going to a bunch of hoops to the NBL, loving the NBA around that Michael Jordan sort of, explosion era that we probably copped a little bit of the end of the Magic and Larry era as well. They sort of put it in front of us a little bit. You sort of pop off, across the Australian media, and then it just goes absolutely skyrockets. And you're a big part of that in Australia, obviously. So this was, let alone the NBA connection where you actually, have the ring from the Spurs and everything. But your story's been told plenty of times in Australia. And I think NBA Straya, we sort of look at this a little bit differently. And what you can't see in the NBA Straya studios, Gazey, is there's a lot of Seattle Supersonics paraphernalia. A lot of Sonics paraphernalia. I actually have a Sean Kemp poster that's signed half to my name. So my name, James. I spell it Jaymz. Because I'm a moron. We all get that. But my beloved wife found a poster on eBay that I've been talking about. It's literally signed to J from Sean Kemp. And that's where your NBA journey basically begins, right? Like you tried out for the Sonics. You're the last cut. This all happens after the amazing Seton Hall run, after the Olympics in '88, where you've sort of gotten onto the sort of the international stage a little bit. Take us back to that period, right? Before the NBA's really taken off over here, where we didn't have any Australians in the NBA at all. We've had times where we've had 13 over the last year or two. And you were very close to being the first. Very close. And then we had Lucian pip you right there because you don't make the Sonics roster. How did that all come about? What happened with the Sonics?
Well, it was following my time with Seton Hall, and it was interesting because when I was playing at Seton Hall, I was listed as a junior. They were hopeful to get another year. I was an older student, but because of my participation in the Olympic Games, it was felt that there was a good chance that I would be granted another year to get another year of eligibility. Back then, I don't know what the rules are now. Back then, for every year after you turn 20, you lost a year of eligibility. But we applied and it was all looking good. But what happened is because the Pirates, the mighty Seton Hall Pirates, we did so well, we got through to the championship game. It drew a lot of attention to our team. And being first and foremost from a really small school that got through to the championship game, and then secondly, being a foreign player in the collegiate ranks, it's not like it is today. There weren't that many foreigners playing. So a lot of tension came on me because we got through to the championship game against Michigan, and And as such, there was a lot of investigations about my eligibility, about whether I'm a professional. Those types of questions were being asked, and a lot of heat was coming down following the overtime loss to Michigan. So it was felt that it was subsequently proven to be that absolutely everything was above board and legitimate. But at the time, going through it with PJ Calissimo, the head coach, it was felt that it was probably best that I didn't return for another year. So because of that, it was a late. The NBA wasn't going to be my option because I was planning on going back to Seton Hall. So very late in the piece, decided that we weren't going to go back, and because of that, initially I wasn't in the draft, but then we went very late to say, oh no, well, we're finished. Do you want to get, so we made myself available, didn't get drafted, but then had a couple of invitations. And the two teams that were most interested were the Seattle Supersonics and the Philadelphia 76ers. But I chose to go try out with Seattle. Had a great time. Bernie Bickerstaff was the coach. Sean Kemp was on that team, as you mentioned. There was a whole bunch of Dana Barris was another player that got drafted that year who played in the Big East with Boston College. So I had some experience against him. Dale Ellis, Xavier McDaniel, Sadale Threet, Nate McMillan. It was a good team, and I learned a lot. It was a fun experience, but I didn't make the roster. Back then, unlike it is today, where they carry 15 or 16 players, they didn't carry any extra. So I didn't make the 12, and came back and continued to play here in Australia.
It feels to me like one of those amazing missed opportunities because, as you sort of mentioned, right, they had Dana Barris, they basically always had a couple of shooters on those Sonics rosters, and I feel like you would have fit in perfectly, right? Because that's what they sort of then went on to have, like with Hersey Hawkins, with basically even like Kendall Gill, like those sorts of players where they just sort of do everything, but they could always hit from the outside as well.
I was there for a bit.
Exactly, and I feel like you would have been perfect on those teams, Gazey. It's killing me. Who knows what would have happened in '93? I'll tell you what, if you had been on that team. But anyway, that sort of stretch is like absolutely amazing, obviously, because throwing back to like your start with your dad and with the Tigers, and obviously being in and around Australian basketball for so many years prior to that, the Seton Hall run, you sort of hit on that. Like, was it weird to sort of be a part of a huge college basketball moment and absolutely nobody back home in Australia know what the F was going on?
They didn't know what was going on when I went over there because we're coming off our best ever performance at the Olympic Games. We went to Seoul and we actually, for the first time, played off for a medal. So that was a fun experience, but I didn't have a lot of time to enjoy and celebrate that. So basically straight from the Olympics over to Seton Hall. But because we were so successful and we did get through to the NCAA tournament and then ultimately to the Final Four in Seattle, ironically, the Channel 7 decided to take the semi-final game and then the championship game. So this was a first in Australia. And because of that, a lot of people who didn't know much about basketball, certainly didn't know a lot about college basketball, got exposure to it. And for me, once again, it brought a lot of attention on me because the reason they were doing it was because they had this Australian in the game. So it was shown on Channel 7. I think it was like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And when I got back to see, I was sort of oblivious to the attention it was getting, other than, because I've been away from home for quite some time. And and everyone's saying, "Oh no, it's a pretty big deal. It's a pretty big deal." And I'm like, "Oh yeah," but you're so fixated on what you're doing over there, you don't necessarily think about the impact that it was having. And it wasn't until I got back and people were saying, kids would say, "Oh, we had the afternoon where we all sat around the telly watching it," and people say, "Oh, I took some time off work to watch it." You thought, "Hey, that's nice. It's nice that I was able to provide to be the catalyst to give some exposure to the sport."
I love it. I would have been, so what, like six or something like that? Yeah. I was in like prep or grade 1, which is crazy to think about. But I'm also like, I love this idea because like then you, obviously with the Tigers, you have a couple of incredible years around the start of the 90s, and you end up on the Bullets, which came after a couple of other tryouts, didn't it? There was some other teams that you'd sort of spoken to in the lead up, and then I feel like wasn't it the Bullets that sort of came out of the absolutely nowhere?
Yeah, pretty much. It was following our 93 season. So back then we played in the winter, Australian winter. So we weren't starting until March, April, thereabouts. And we won the title in October of 93. And then during that off season, I got a call to go over there. The team was not going to make the playoffs. They had some horrific injuries that they had to deal with, and we're looking for a player. And I would have gone over a lot earlier, but back then, because they contacted me probably early January, but to get all the visa and get the appropriate documentation, it took a lot longer than I thought. So it wasn't probably till, I can't remember the exact date, probably late February, early March. So I was getting towards the end of the season, and for me, it was fantastic. I had 2 10-day contracts. That was all they were going to commit to me. Originally, when they started, they were looking to commit to me until the end of the season, but because of the whole visa situation, they didn't want to interfere with the Tigers. They had great respect for the Melbourne Tigers, and they just wanted me to come over and see if I could help out. So I did that. So I was there probably about a month, and it was a wonderful experience. Again, a team that had a lot of great players on it. Kenny Walker, Rex Chapman was there. Georgie Mirasan was another one that was on there. Tom Gugliotta, Brent Price was on the team. So it was a great team, great bunch of guys, and it was difficult though because, like I said, it was towards the end of the season and they were not going to make the playoffs. So it was, it was a tough situation. But Wes Unseld was the coach, and again, just a fantastic experience and got exposed to the NBA. And in my own head, it satisfied a lot of the own questions I had in my own head about, what it was like and whether or not I felt I could participate. So it was a really good experience.
There's a couple of great other nicknames on that team. It was like Nervous Purvis Allison, I think, was on those ones.
He was there.
American Pie, Don McLean. Amazing.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, he was there. UCLA guy.
Obviously, Googs was fantastic because Googs would obviously go on to play with Hammer, I think, when he was on Minnesota as well. So
yeah, that's right.
Pretty weird. Nice connection. I think that was also one of the great moments in Australian basketball history because obviously you're on the cover of One on One in that Bullets jersey, that beautiful, beautiful Bullets jersey. But you're also immortalized on the Upper Deck basketball card for Byron Houston.
Yeah, that's right.
He's dunking all over you, putting his loaf in your face. And it's just like, why didn't you have a name on the back of that jersey?
Well, I think it had to do with, I did have a name. My name was on there, but I think they photoshopped it out because I was only there for a short period of time. And because I was no longer in the league the following year, I think that back then there might have been some restrictions or rights issues. So only those really close basketball fans can recognize me. But I still remember the play. It was a hellacious dunk.
Yep.
So it's something that stuck out for me, and it's one of the quirky things that happens when you're over there. I was only in the team for 10 minutes, and really, a very small role at that. But caught in the wrong place at the wrong time, and Byron Houston is this hellacious dunk right on my bonds.
It's like the way that social media is now, it's like, I got posterized. We posterized. He's been posterized. You quite literally got immortalized being posterized.
Yeah.
When did you find out about that? Like, did someone show you that card at some point and go, Gazey, what are you doing?
Yeah, pretty much. It was back then. Of course, there was no, it wasn't the internet, and they're not communicating and showing pictures like it is today. But I think actually someone sent it to me in the mail and asked me to sign it. That's how I first saw it.
Was it Byron Houston?
No, it wasn't him. And unfortunately, he got himself into some strife off the floor as well. So it was just, I think it was just a fan who sent it to me. I'm like, oh, crikey, have a look at this. I could remember straight away. I can remember the play.
Amazing. So those interceding years, so the Bullets, they were obviously, as you mentioned, horrible that year, like 20 odd wins or whatever, and just legitimately very, very Washington. That's been a lot of their history, apart from like the late 70s when they were really good, and like a couple of minutes here or there with Gilbert Arenas. But those interceding years, so you had like a European stint at some point as well. Obviously, you win that first title with the Tigers in '93. You go back, was the grand final in '96 against the Magic?
Yeah, we were in the grand final in '92 and '93 and '96 and '97.
Yeah, and so you win 2 of those titles. Like, while this is all happening and you're crushing it in the NBL, winning MVPs, winning scoring titles, are there other like bits of interest from NBA teams like calling up, going, Gazey, what's going on?
There was, and even prior to that, prior to going to Washington, there was, but I was so fixated on playing for Australia, and that was really my attention. And perhaps it was a lack of self-belief and perhaps not having the confidence. And unlike it is today, of course, there were very few foreigners playing in the league, so you weren't getting as much attention as what players throughout the world are today. And we didn't get to watch it all that often. There might have been a game of the week on the ABC or Channel 10 or whoever had the rights, but we never get to see a lot. My dad had some mates in the States that would send him videos, so I'd get to see some games, old games on tape. But because it's not as in your face as it is today, it wasn't such a big deal, and it wasn't really a burning goal or something that I was striving to get to. All my focus was on the Australian team, so I didn't really take too seriously. The only one that I guess I regret the most was, I remember my dad was really good friends with Dave Gavitt, who was the commissioner of the Big East and went on to be the general manager or have a very high executive position with the Boston Celtics. And he reached out to my dad and said, we'd love to have Andrew come and be part of the Celtics. And it was one where, there had to be a process to go through, but I'm pretty confident because he was there when I was at Seton Hall at the Big East as well. Felt there was a really good fit, and they wanted me to go over to camp to try out and with a pretty strong recommendation and belief that there'd be a reasonable chance to make the team. But at the time, I said no. I'd had my time with Seattle. I was enjoying it. I could see the growth of the sport here, and so I said no. I'm not going to go do it. That's probably the only one that I look back on with any level of regret. And even then, it's only mild, because the journey that I had going over and playing in Europe and just to be a part of the growth of sport here in Australia made it pretty special. So there were some nibbles along the way, but nothing too serious, with the exception of that one, until, of course, the San Antonio Spurs in '99.
Do you think much? I mean, obviously a lot changed after the '96 Olympics, right? Like, obviously the lead up to that, and then you've got the '96 Olympics in Atlanta. That team itself is obviously amazing. It's still amazing to think back to those rosters. And obviously Shane then goes over to Minnesota after that. There's a bunch of other sort of, there's a lot of hype around Sam McKinnon. We've got Chris Anstey being drafted at the same point as well. Was there any sort of moment where you're like, oh, here we go, and then you land on San Antonio in '99? But was there sort of anything after the Olympics where you're like, I might get in here? What are we doing?
No, not at all. At that age, I'd reached a point where I just assumed that had passed me by. And and like I said, I wasn't really concentrating on it. It wasn't like I had this burning thing or I was putting myself out there. I was really content with what I was doing. And it was actually during the '98 World Cup that, and it was the lockout year. So Greg Popovich was at the World Championships. He was just a young coach at the time. And I didn't even, of all my international campaigns, I didn't think I played that well in '98. And I just guess it's the fickle hand of fate that right place, right time. Pop was there. He felt like there was a specific need that he was trying to fill, and he offered me the opportunity. So it was really random. I knew exactly what I was getting myself into. He sort of said, "Listen, we've got we've got some plans with our team, very much an insurance policy, but I would love to be a part of the team and prepared to make it a commitment. So I thought at that stage of my career that, hey, I was going to take this. And it was not as easy as decision as a lot of people think, because we were flying that season, the 98 season, with the Melbourne Tigers. We were going really, really well, and we were one of the favourites to win another title. So I had to forego that and went over there, and obviously no regrets, of course, but I wasn't a prominent player. I didn't get to play too much, but just to be a part of it and share that experience and be on that journey and see firsthand what it takes, and to be in the inner sanctum of a championship winning team, it was again an unbelievable privilege.
The idea of like you actually still winning the NBA title next to the likes of the Admiral David Robinson and Tim, a very young Tim Duncan and co. It's still like one of the weird, more unheralded aspects of Australian sport, because I mean, you weren't actually out there crushing it like we'd watched you do in Australia for years and years and years and years. And I still remember to this day, though, why are they playing Gazey? He's going to go out there and crush it. What are they doing? They're going to cost. No. Anyway, who cares? Yeah.
No, they had a really good team, and in my position,
really
they were stacked. With Steve Kerr came into the program late. Like when I signed, it was there. Steve Kerr, Mario Elie, they weren't even signed at that time. I made a commitment, albeit it wasn't formal. Made a commitment before I even knew that they were even in consideration. So Sean Elliott was a superstar, but I was just happy to be there. It was just an incredible honor and privilege to be a part of it.
You end up in the locker room as a NBA champion. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's it. Just right place at the right time, right set of circumstances, and play along and get to meet and share time with Tim Duncan, Dave Robinson, Steve Kerr. Jerome Kersey was a character on that team as well, who's no longer with us. So it was an Avery Johnson was the little general. So it was a really good team, and to be a part of that, to be a part of the group, albeit that you always want to play more and make more of a contribution, but just to be there was fantastic.
So do you get to be counted as part of the pop tree? You've gone into coaching yourself at times, all this sort of stuff. We've obviously got plenty of coaches that came out from him as players and as assistants. So, I mean, you've got to count there, don't you?
I think anyone that's been through the program would be hard not to be influenced. Pop's got a way that he coaches, and the way in which he establishes cultures, and the way in which he puts in place his systems and all those things. It's hard not to be influenced when you're part of that, and you see firsthand the success that it can have. So yeah, it's somewhere in there that you're impacted by it, but probably not the strongest influence, because my dad was always had the most profound influence. But whether it's Pop, whether it's PJ, the coaches I had with the Australian team, these types of people have had a significant influence on my development and how you approach the game, and now as a coach, how you want to teach the game.
Really quickly, just to hit on some Boomers stuff. I mean, obviously the 96, 2000 teams are like, I think, especially again for my generation, just like the absolute touchstones before we then hit our, second golden era, I guess, from about 08 onwards. And did you feel that sort of like the groundswell, I guess, by the time 96 hits, and then obviously by the time you're out there waving the flag in the Olympics, and it's just absolute chaos? Like, did you feel like that the contribution that sort of group had made had finally gotten, enough recognition, even if you don't get it to a medal at that point, it all becomes like a bigger part of a larger narrative, I think?
Not at the time. At the time, you're just playing and you got your own goals, and you feel like you're on the cusp of doing something, and you get engrossed with the culture and your teammates. You're not really thinking of the long-term consequences of what you're doing. But in hindsight, I think, I reflect back on those that influenced me. Phil Smythe, Larry Senstock, that group that when I first came into the team and the impact that it has, I like to think and hope that those that continue through the program, the messages and the culture and the goals, they're passed on. So, you do feel grateful that you have those opportunities, but you also comes with a bit of disappointment because you're not able to get the ultimate goal of winning a medal. Upon reflection, still very, very proud of what we were able to achieve. But at the time, there's definitely a tinge of disappointment because when you get so close and you want to be, you want to win, you want to win a gold medal, you want to win a medal, and to not fulfill that, clearly it's disappointing. But I don't think I would classify it as a failure.
What goes through your mind though when Shane Heal's trying to pick fights with Charles Barkley?
Well, it's all part of the fun, part of the fun of the journey, and part of the excitement of it all and the buzz, and part of the camaraderie you develop, and how you want to be in there and represent your country and not be intimidated, not want to take a backward step. And I think Shane personified that in that moment. Didn't matter whether we're playing against Angola or we're playing against the dream team. We're going about it as competitive as hell and seeking respect. And it's frightening when you're in there and you see the size of those guys and you think, gee, this guy, if he grabs me, he just crush me with one grab. But it's all part of the journey, and it's what makes the journey so special. Moments like that where you feel like you're sticking up for your brothers, and it's representative of the brotherhood of the team and how you respond in those moments.
So I guess like on top of that as well, like the one thing that we share in common is that we were both in tears after the bronze medal game. I think I was actually in this room. I was doing a whiskey shoey. I think I was doing it out of the deli one rather than the Gazey pony. I've got the deli behind there.
Right.
Did the whiskey shoey. We had the live stream going. It was absolute chaos in here. And then we have your mug up there as well. Basically giving voice to everybody else as well who was in the exact sort of same boat, which was a lot of us, I think.
Yeah.
How do you now feel about so we've just had, a pretty rough World Cup campaign, but we've got Paris next year, of course, Paris 2024. Last little thing on the boom is how do you sort of feel about that one shaping up with Paddy barely getting any minutes at the moment, Jock barely playing as well for Houston. How do you feel like Gorge is going to go into this one, and how do you think we'll actually go?
I think that we remain really confident. I think that you look at the players we have, the talent that we've got coming through the ranks. It's a special era that we've got, and you only have to look at what happened at the World Cup, and you see a team like Germany, and I think that should feel good about our ability to play to that level, and that level for them was good enough to win a gold medal. Now, sure, people will look at it and say, well, some of the mega stars weren't there, but I think that would be highly disrespectful, and one that of the teams that were there, a lot of them did have their superstars. Sure, Serbia, Jokic, I understand he'll make a difference, but the United States team, a lot of people critical of their level of talent, but it was still a very, very talented team and high-profile players that are capable of doing some extraordinary things. So I think that when you be a little bit more pragmatic about it and you assess where we're at, we're still in really good shape. A tough loss to Germany, a bank shot with a minute to go goes in. Otherwise, we probably win that game. So, and against Slovenia, it was a downer, but you've got one of the top 5 players in the world you're going up against. So it's not like we're miles away, albeit I think there are some good lessons learned, and I think it'll hold us in good stead for what comes up in Paris.
Tell you what, we could use a couple of young big men. That's kind of, I feel like, the one thing that we're sort of really lacking. But we've got a lot of guards.
Duop Reith is doing some really good things in Portland, and I thought Duop Reith had an outstanding World Cup. So Jock comes back in there. So I don't think, and of course the one that can really make a difference is Ben. Ben Simmons. So I think if you've got those guys and they're playing well, I wouldn't be too disheartened about what's going on in the big man department.
Yeah, it's like the one thing that I always cast my dumb brain back on is like the missed opportunities of like injuries to like prime Bogut, and it's like we tend to almost like forget how good Bogut was at times. You're like, that dude can anchor a defense, anchor an offense, and it's like the sort of thing that you take for granted at the time, and now you kind of really miss it. But anyway,
that's the nature of the game. You got Bogues as one; it's a good example, but also Luke Longley. You think, well, imagine if we had Luke in '96 and we finished fourth and Sabonis in that last game. But that's injuries. That's just the nature of the game. That can happen from time to time. So you got to be good enough to deal with it.
Really quickly, what was your favorite moment playing in the NBA? Did you have like one moment that you just sort of sticks in your brain?
Well, actually, one of the favorite ones was when I wasn't really in the NBA. I was on the Seattle Supersonics roster, and we were playing an exhibition game or preseason game in St. Louis, going up against Magic Johnson. So Magic was one of my heroes to have the chance to play against him. And I actually played a little bit in that game. So to have that experience and that's more to do with just being starstruck by Magic and what he meant to me as a youngster. But just anytime you pull on an NBA jersey and you're up against these guys that you see on the telly and have tremendous respect for them, they're all great moments.
I'm still just shattered that you never actually ended up playing on Boston, because I mean, like, we've got the original Larry Bird and then the Aussie Larry Bird. It's like Boston would have fallen in love with you, Gazey. Would have been over. They would have had another bloody statue out there for you. They would have been falling over themselves, chanting Gazey.
Pretty sure that wouldn't have been the case, but no.
Do you have a favorite NBA teammate that you played with?
Well, I got along well with them all. I think when I was with the Spurs, I hung out most with Will Perdue and Steve Kerr and Malik Rose. They were the three guys probably I hung out with the most. So not really. Don't play favorites. You're asking me which one of my kids do I love the most. You love them all.
I mean, obviously, you also, in terms of your NBL career, Leonard Copeland is like, almost synonymous with you. Like, we at the Gaze and Copeland sort of thing that Anstey put on a little while ago. It was just like one of those back and forth. You guys just talk literally at each other for like an hour. Yeah, it's fantastic. Outside of Copes, though, who was your favorite NBL teammate?
Well, them all. I guess when you win a championship, they're special moments that you share with each other. I spent a lot of time with Warwick Giddey because we coach. He's still here. We coached his son, and still very close with him. Nigel Purchase is still one of my closest friends. Obviously, Copes. We spent a lot of time with Copes. Just got finished playing 18 holes with golf with Copes today. Got the win, so that makes it even more special. So yeah, they're all great. You just build bigger relationships with some rather than others. But I've been lucky that throughout the journey that they've all been really good to me and helped me in when we were teammates, and helped me have some of the successes that I was personally being able to have. I wouldn't have been able to do that without that support.
The same thing with the titles. I got to assume that the 93 title was the sort of the one that stands out the
93 and 97. Both of them mean so much. But you're right, the first one, not having had that feeling before, but no two are the same. And to share that in Perth in that hostile environment, it was very galvanizing, and it made for a special moment.
Amazing. All right, Gazey, we're not going to keep you any longer. This has been an absolute thrill to have you on for the 1000th episode.
I appreciate it.
I'm just giddy with excitement, basically.
No, I appreciate it. And congratulations, like I said from the start. Well done. And may there be tens of thousands more.
Here's to it. All right. Thank you very much. It's Andrew Gaze.